I am here today to talk about the forestry mill tax because if we look back and we look and compare it to other states, Wisconsin's been really successful in our forestry program, and it's mainly because of the stable funding that mill tax has provided. It's a minimal cost to our property owners in the state, average about $25, $26. A lot of people don't even notice that it's on our tax bills, but that money that it generates, about $90 million a year, feeds back into an industry that supports Wisconsin economy to $24 billion, 64,000 people employed, and the #1 employer in 10 northern counties in Wisconsin. So an important program and one that we want to see healthy. It feeds our local mills, the jobs that are so important to our northern economy, and it gives support for programs that reimburse our state stewardship fund that feed back into protecting the almost 250,000 acres of land that were protected through working forest conservation easements. Important for private landowner assistance, our urban forestry programs, just a program that will be really difficult to have individual people and maintain to lobby for each individual portion of that funding that comes back. So that's why we think this is really critical to support and maintain.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. One of the things that we can see is that we are in a huge crisis for the transportation budget. And at one point, there was an independent funding source for transportation, as it is for forestry.
Right.
Are you challenged or concerned that, and because I think I heard in your testimony, the GPR is there today,
Yeah.
but that, like transportation, you might find yourself with a crumbling infrastructure
Right.
that exists for forestry later if that independent funding source is not maintained?
I would agree with that fully. Transportation, state parks, the Endangered Resources Program, that was funded entirely through GPR, and then the license plate program came along. That came as a source of funding that was supposed to be in addition to supporting the Endangered Resources Program, and eventually became a substitute, and now eventually it's the only funding. So that whittling away and that erosion of that permanent funding is key to sustaining one of the biggest industries in Wisconsin, which is forestry. So yeah, like transportation and others, that is a huge concern.
I have a couple of other questions for you. I know
Sure.
that we have the only forestry research lab in the nation in Wisconsin. And I know that we also lead in forestry in the nation. And so do you believe that those things are potentially in jeopardy if we do not prioritize forestry in the way that we have in the past?
Yeah, again, you have a really hard job to do. Transportation, education, healthcare, and then many, many other things that you heard today and around the state. And for this forestry, how are we going to raise to that level? Research is really important because if we look at the challenges that our forests are facing from insects and disease and the changes in some of the things that are occurring with rainfall events and drought, we need to make sure that we continue strong research programs. And yeah, having funding for research we've seen in the state over the last years is really difficult to maintain. If we have that program, it's minimal to the taxpayers, it's really important to feed that industry.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to share with us, because there is no question that we can't fund education, we can't fund the needs of our people, we can't fund long-term care, we can't deal with health if we don't have industries
Right.
that help us to generate
Right.
people
Right.
who have businesses and the
Right.
things that help us to have revenue. I
Right.
mean, that's just like the cart before the horse.
Right.
And why kill one of our largest
Right.
industries? And
I agree.
think we're on that pathway once we don't fund it appropriately. So thank you so much.
Thank you.